Hi, I'm Jonathan Tripodi, and I'm providing you with an astrological update. The date today is July 28th, 20. Um, wow, incredible energies have entered into our lives, our bodies, our minds at the beginning of this year, and especially got particularly intense in April, May, June. And now here in July, we're just kind of integrating what happened. So much internal change, so much activation of emotion. Um, how are you feeling? How's it going? If you're feeling a bit vulnerable, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling in shock, if you're suddenly in a fear spiral, preoccupied with your security and the uncertainty of the future, you're not. This is pretty much the emotional climate of the United States, anyway. And and astrologically, that's par for the course. So what we have happening is several planets that are ushering in a pretty significant change, and this change comes in waves. We've already had wave one and wave two. This is wave three. So the changes are ultimately leading us to a new way of being on this planet. And it's been titled the Aquarian Age. And so as we continue to move forward, we're going to be entering a different state of consciousness, a state of mind that no longer is encumbered or restrained by the conditioning of our past. So our consciousness ultimately is being challenged. The way we think, the priorities that we make, and also the fears that we have accumulated as a race over the past 2,000 years. There are these fears that are recycled generation after generation, stimulate behaviors that are destructive to ourselves, to each other, to the planet. And, there are certain powers that be that capitalize on our fears for their gain, mostly financial gain. And so just appreciate, and not that you're a victim, but appreciate that you are susceptible to these programs, to these fear programs. And fear programs are being triggered big time right now. And so we're actively aware of them, and most likely, we're reacting to them. And when we react to them, it gives them power. Okay, it's like a merry-go-round. As soon as you react to the movement of the merry-go-round, if you try to, you attach yourself to it, and so you end up going on that merry-go-round. You're spinning around. And so, if I have any, real advice, so to speak, or encouragement as to how to approach these fears, I'm going to recommend number one, that you cultivate, if you haven't already, a meditative practice that's very simple. Learn to observe your thoughts. Learn to observe your emotions. Observe them, watch them as if you've gone to the zoo and you're walking by these different cages, and you're seeing different animals, but you're on the other side of the glass or the bar. So yes, is a tiger scary? Is it potentially lethal? Yes, if you're inside the cage with them. So these thoughts really don't have much power over you. if you're in the observer role, if you're in that state of watching them. And with practice, this technique will disarm these fears. That's step one. That's not going to solve or stop the fears from coming. It's not going to change necessarily your body and its response to your fears. You might still, it might still make your heart beat faster. It might still, cause your breathing to become shallow. It might still create muscles, tensions in different parts of your body. However, you're observing. And as you observe and not react and observe, then this power of these thoughts starts to diminish. And then all of those biological symptoms of your fears begin to decrease. So, step one, observe thoughts, observe feelings, observe your body, observe how it reacts to these things. Appreciate that whatever thoughts or feelings you're having, they're not unique to you. They are an inherited state of consciousness, a program, a fear program that has been handed down generationally. It belongs to humanity. My mango tree in the backyard doesn't seem to be has consumed the thoughts and fears that I have. Every morning, the birds are out chirping and the sun's up shining. Bees are buzzing around looking for nectar. But human beings, the human race, is the race that's vulnerable to programming and also has the capacity to store in memory thoughts and feelings. And so when you were conceived and you were in the formation of this body that you inhabit is under development, information was being installed like a computer. It's being installed with a lot of information, basic information like that governs your body's growth and function, but also states of consciousness, so belief systems, perceptions, even patterns of thinking and emotions. So all of this has created these patterns, these programs that have been regenerated, recycled, has created a reality here on Earth for humanity that continues to be recycled generation after generation. My question to you, and you can, explore it yourself, is anything really that different than it was 2,000 years ago when it comes to the behaviors of human beings? Is our reality really that much different? Our mission, should we choose to accept it, and I say accept it because these planetary energies are simply symbols to of a shift in consciousness. They're symbolic of a shift in consciousness that is specifically confronting our existing state of consciousness and stimulating it to go through a change. So with that in mind, before you change your mind, start by just observing it. Step off the merry-go-round, step off the automation of the mind. And that's freedom step one. Now, step two is to descend from your mind into your heart. Easier said than done. Why? Because when our heart has been hurt or overwhelmed, we have protective responses that begin to disconnect us from that heartache or heart pain. So, throughout our lives, we've had a series of heartaches, heartbreaks, uh, and emotional pain. And so, in a very natural and unconscious way, we've protected ourselves from it by disconnecting from it. So, our heart may be a little removed. We may be a little removed from our heart. So, that's why we're in our head so much, and it becomes such a difficulty to get out of it because we're protecting ourselves from these past experiences that overwhelmed us emotionally. And so we remove ourselves from the very part of us where emotions reside, where they come from, where you would feel them. So your heart is one area and your gut is the other. The gut has been referred to as our emotional gut. Why is there such an epidemic of gut issues on the planet? Whether it be digestive, elimination, absorption, so much inflammation in our gut, and then we get leaky gut and these toxins and inflammations, and it extends into the rest of the body, and we have a chronic pain and fatigue epidemic in our culture here in the United States, maybe worldwide, that from my perspective and from my insight into the body, has to do with many years of disconnecting, protecting ourselves from emotions and suppressing them. So from the neck down is where we feel. From the neck up, we think. And up here, from the third eye to the crown, is where we enter a state of awareness. No thinking, just seeing. So we want to move up to our awareness centers, and specifically the third eye, to begin cultivating these meditative practices so we can see without reacting, just observe, and then descend into our hearts so we can feel. We want to get in touch with our hearts. What would the world be like if humanity was centered in their heart? How would it be different? Would we treat each other differently? Would we treat the planet differently? Would we treat ourselves differently? If we were in contact with love at the source of where love comes from, not to say that love comes from our heart, but it's certainly the portal. So if love is operating on a much universal level, it finds its way into us through this particular junction. What would it be like if we were tapped into that love and felt it, and we were overflowing with it? So we want to get in touch with our hearts and make that the motivation for moving forward in our life. What brings us joy, and what is it you love? Leading your life from that place. And whatever you're doing, it could be, house maintenance. It could be if you're a plumber, you're doing plumbing. Whatever you're doing, it's not what you're doing, it's the state that you're doing it in. So if you're in a state of love and joy with what it is you're doing, then it really doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Because your heart is governing the experience. You're feeding off your heart. You're feeding off the love that's coming through you. Um, Next is, as you move into a state of awareness and get out of your thoughts, you begin to tap into more of your spiritual nature. And your spiritual nature will also provide insight and guidance to you, but not not in the same way that your brain does. Your brain is on it has this basic function, which is to remember information and then regurgitate it later. Sometimes reorganizing it in a unique and different way. We call that being creative. But essentially, it's old business, it's old news. And we're applying what we've learned in the past to what's happening in the present. The difference between your awareness and your heart is it's now centered, it's in the moment centered. It doesn't reference the past, it references this moment. How is this moment informing you? And how does your heart and spirit want to respond? So, this may sound like a sermon, and I don't mean it to be. I simply want to acknowledge as best as I can what I perceive to be the astrological theme going forward. It's already underway, the deconstruction of an old way of being on this planet. And I'm talking about human beings, how they exist on this planet, from what state of consciousness are they operating from in their relationship to themselves, in their relationship to others, in relationship to the world. There's a deconstruction. And there's a lot of pain with this because there's awarenesses, first of all, of how long we've been operating from these state of consciousness, and how hard it's been. The suffering that we've endured. I'll give you number one, for instance. There's a program that is a myth. It's completely untrue and unsubstantiated by science and religion and spirituality. So on all fronts, it's an untruth. And this untruth is that we are separate. We're separate from each other and from life. Wow, that would generate a little fear, don't you think? Don't you think that would, if you were in the state of oneness, like let's say an infant is, the infants are so beautiful. They come into this world, their eyes are wide open, there's no thoughts, and you can tell they're at total peace. They have no consideration or worry about anything. They're in a state of oneness, not consciously, but unconsciously. It's just the way they come in. And then they learn things, and then they suddenly interpret that they're separate. And then from there, it's kind of a downward spiral. There's a whole journey of suffering that is at its source based on I'm separate. So this is one example. So there are many other examples of myths that generate fear, that deprive us of the love and the sanctity of our divinity, our divine nature. And so it's these myths that are being challenged right now. If you got fears coming up, look at the nature of the fears. What thoughts or beliefs are generating these fears? What have you assumed true? I'm afraid of blank, blank, blank. And that's because I assume that this is true. What is it that's so true that you believe that fear is completely unquestioned, it's completely accepted, and it's completely embodied, and you're totally reacting to it. You must have believed something is true that created that fear, whatever that thought, that belief, that perspective. So this is the opportunity to get off the merry-go-round of this inherited programming, much of which is myth-oriented, that generates enormous fears and has created, havoc here in our world, and the way we treat each other and the way we treat ourselves. It's wreaked havoc on our health. So that's what's going on. Chiron is retrograde right now. We're integrating old wounds. Pluto is retrograded. There's a lot of inner transformation happening. Going in. Very uncomfortable. You're encountering a lot of things that you kind of, not consciously, but you kind of tucked away for a later day and moved on. And now we're unpacking. We're unpacking all the things that we maybe avoided or suppressed or chose not to look at. We call that our shadow side. We're looking now into the subconscious and the unconscious. We're getting in touch with untruths that we have assumed were true and have operated from most of our lives. So, okay, where does the truth come from? If it's not this, then what? Well, let me share another technique that I find to be liberating. Start with the fact that you don't know. Let's just not discard information and replace it with another untruth, because the mind doesn't like a vacancy. It doesn't like an empty space. It prefers the known over the unknown. But sometimes if there's not a pause for the real truth to come in, there's not a pause, then the mind quickly just makes something up and puts it in there. So we don't want to replace one untruth with another untruth. We have to give ourselves a pause. When we've discarded, when we're observing untruths showing up in our lives, these fear-based untruths, and we step back and we suddenly realize that we've inherited this, and this isn't necessarily the ultimate truth, but just something we were told or something that was handed down, something our mind made up. Then the question becomes, if that's not true, what is? So next step, acknowledge you don't know. I don't know what the real truth is. And the next thing is to say, it's okay. Let it be okay. I don't know necessarily the truth of who I am. It's okay. I don't know the truth about life. It's okay. I thought I knew what love was. Maybe I don't. It's okay. Because it's okay, because I would rather admit I don't know than to have my mind make something up. So in the genuine state of humility and the innocence of a very young child, that state of mind of I don't know, but I want to know. So first admit you don't. Go into that state of awareness where you're receiving information. Let it work in. There, your mind it's already made up with information. Most of it's come from the internet. And it's a lot of it's just so much. So wipe the chalkboard clean and get back to an empty slate and center yourself in a state of awareness and connect to your heart. Let these two places help you to be in the moment, to receive the insight, the intuitive guidance, the knowing that we're all capable of receiving when our mind isn't, given priority, when our thoughts that are based on the past aren't given priority. Admitting you don't know is the step to knowing, and letting life be a mystery until it reveals itself to you and it reveals something to you. Not you're not going to watch the news and get the answer. You might read a book and it might be a very good book by some great author who just says it just the right way. Not necessarily going to awaken you to the truth as much and as powerfully and as profoundly as when the truth enters you directly, not through another source, directly. And you exist. You exist, so the truth exists. You are the truth. That's what's going on. There's a deconstruction, and these planetary energies are describing the different ways in which we're deconstructing the reality that our mind created based on the past, inherited from the past. And we're getting inspired. Okay, there's going to be that phase too, where we get inspired by something brand new way of looking at life, new perspective. Let me give you for instance, racism. What an untruth is racism, that the color of a person's skin defines who they are, and that one color is better than another. Ouch. That's an untruth. Gender, man or woman, defines who you are. Yikes. You're put in a box right away. Right away, there's separation. I'm this and I'm not that. This is what I am. This is who I am, is being defined by who? It's time to discover, it's time to be liberated from these untruths so that we can actually get more connected with what is true and live by it and be unified by it, as a race. Everybody has their own unique path in life. However, there's a foundation, a foundational consciousness that we share together. Okay, we've created a world where we have stop signs and stop lights, and we all agree. If I'm in a car, I'm going to obey these because it's for the greater good of everyone. And the truth is, if we don't, it's going to be a mess. So if we start to, let's say, embody the truth that the color of our skin does not define who a person is or their gender, then it allows the truth of who people are to be seen, to be experienced, to be received, to be celebrated. Look, you tear the skin off our body, sounds morbid. What do you got? How would you even know gender, race without the skin? Just be a bunch of muscles and bones. It starts to look the same. Yes, there are differences. We are all unique on the surface. At the core, same. We need to get more in touch with the truth of our sameness before we get all excited and reactive. and critical and judgmental about what's on the surface, the unique part of us that's on the surface. Our personalities are very unique. There's no two personalities that are the same. But our hearts, when it comes to love, one of my favorite lines from a song written by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. It's called Wooden Ships. It's describing the Vietnam War. And it says, if you smile at me, I will understand, because that is something everybody, everywhere does in the same language. It's beautiful. It's true. You can travel anywhere in the world and smile at somebody, and they get it. Kind. It's communication. It's when you smile at somebody, it has nothing to do with their personality. It has nothing to do with wanting something from them or judging them in any way. It's an expression of what the same is in you with the same is in them. It's a recognition. It's a love, unconditional, loving kindness. This is what we're moving towards. If your pain and suffering has meaning, if you can appreciate the deconstruction, the death of an old you, so that the truer version of yourself, not the personality, not the color of your skin, not your culture, but the core nature of yourself is so it can emerge. That's what the death is for. Death of the superficial, emergence of the truth at your core that you share in common with all of those around you. So the Aquarian age has to do with the unity that's going to occur on this planet with humanity, while at the same time, and there's an equality. The unity is based on equality. Not that everybody deserves equal rights, but that are equal. They're not elevating, not this hierarchical system that the mind has created, that this person's better, this person's deserves it, this one doesn't. None of this. We're equal, and there's an understanding, a consciousness. It's not just somebody's like good idea. Let's do this. It's coming from a realization that this is true. We're equal. Once we connect with where we're equal, then we can relate much differently with what's unique and different. That's where we're heading. Expect things to really pick up speed forward. Right now, we're in an inward process of deconstruction, confronting our feelings, our thoughts, our past, and our connections to security, our connections to what's true, our connections to, do we have faith and trust in anything outside of ourselves? Or are we just all independent, relying exclusively on our own inner resources? Or is there something greater than yourself? That lends itself to trust and faith in something greater than yourself. We're connecting with the reality around death. We are mortal. This vehicle. Is there a part of our nature that's eternal? That's for us to discover, not figure out up here. Discover here. Heart, spirit, discover it. Observe thoughts, that'll help. Center in your heart will help. How to move forward in this world? That's a good question. There's lots of changes. There's lots of challenges. This shift is monumental. How do I move forward? That's really the essential question. Where am I going to center myself moving forward? And what I'm recommending and what I'm suggesting is that we're being discouraged energetically. The planetary movements are suggesting that we're not to figure it out up here, that we're to move into our hearts and into ours, and therefore our spiritual nature, and to receive insight about how to move forward. What's most important, no matter what happens in the world, where are you going to be the happiest? Where are you going to be the most at peace? Where are you going to be the most powerful? In your fears? No. In your thoughts? Probably not. Discover your other power centers that are actually, the mind was meant to serve these higher powers, not to be in charge of or dominate over your heart and spirit. Pluto moves out of retrograde in mid-October. There's a lot of forward motion. All the inner work we're doing now becomes externalized in the form of assertive action is taken on the transformations that take place between now and then. By beginning of 2025, Pluto enters Aquarius and stays there. So the Aquarian age gets a big boost by Pluto, and the elections in the United States will be complete, and whoever shows up in that position is going to be ushering in the Aquarian age. And is going to help instigate even further this process that I'm describing. The sign of Aquarius has to do with being authentic, okay? Being truly yourself. That means celebrating what's unique about you, but not being convinced that that is the beginning and end of who you are. Your personality, your thoughts, your feelings are an expression of this unique being that you've entered into, but that which has entered and given life to this body is beyond the personality. It's beyond thoughts and feelings. It's beyond all the information that's been recycled into it. So if you really want to be authentic, true to yourself, true to who you are, I'm suggesting here and here, not here. And that's the process. So in summary, a couple of steps: observe thoughts and feelings, practice observing, watch it happen without trying to change it. Not easy to do, takes practice. That's classic meditation. 2, breathe into your heart on a regular basis. Pray in your own way. Just put your hands over your heart. Let your heart speak through you. Let it speak. Let it express its gratitude, its desire for good things in this world, for good things for yourself. Let it connect you with love that has no limits, that has no boundaries, that is beyond the container of your heart, that is universal. Let it help remind you of what's really powerful. Love transforms. It is truly other than vision. visionary guidance. The heart transforms. Well, thanks for listening. Doesn't sound much like astrology, but it actually is. I'll be posting again in the near future. So if you like this video, let me know. If you have questions, chats, leave me messages. Would love to reconnect with you in the near future. If you want a reading, I offer readings life cycle readings at my website, jonathantrip.com/astrology/. All right. Thanks for joining.